So we are taking like two examples. So we have a student is one table and school is one table, and where when we want to relate these two objects, then what we're going to do was we're going to map each student information to a school. So let's say these are the columns like ID, name, address, school, or the okay, forget about school now. So ID, name, address are the columns in the student. Uh, and in school we have ID, name, address. So ID is nothing but a Salesforce ID that is Salesforce by default create whenever a new record is created. Fine. Now I have a student information. Let's say I have a one student. His name is something called Rom, and he is from let's say Hyderabad, and he is belonging to school called SA00 one school. Fine. So what I will store, I will create first of all I will create a relation from student. Excuse me. From a student to a school. So what I will do, I will create one relation field. That means the relation field, I will select this object, school object as a relation. So once I create the relation, so when I created a student information, what I will do is this relation field is capable of linking or searching on different schools. And once you select a school, it will store the ID of the school onto a student record. So how it looks is in the back end, it will store the school number, but in front end, that means in the UI when you search and save, we cannot understand the IDs, right, which is created by Salesforce, and it's kind of a random digits, we cannot readable. So what it helps was, it will help with whatever the name we are using in the school, that name will be displayed when you're doing a search, select and display everywhere. It will display the name of the record in the school, this field, but in the back end, it will store the ID of the school. Similarly, I have one more student with a different, I mean, different record in Salesforce. So he's also studying on a same school. So I want to link, or I want to map same school for the sham as well. Just want to remove this one. Okay. Okay. Now we have one mapping as from this school, this student to school, and another is like this. And similarly, I can have one more student. Okay, so we have three students that are from a same school. So if you observe, I don't want to waste time here. So we have a three students and they are from a same school, Chaitanya. Similarly, we can have so many records that are belong to a same school, or we can have a one more school, and there are different students that are belong to the next school. So every time what we will do, we will do just create a school once, and then we will create a student, and just we will store the ID of the school in the student object. So do you understand what is a relation, why we use a relation? When we have a repeated data and we want to give a best model, we don't want to repeat that information, and we will separate that part of the table into a separate part, and we will avoid duplication, and we will store space, and even it will easy for some calculation. So in future, if you think that there will be a fees paid by the student and a due from a student, okay, from school level, what is the expected due, and what is a paid fee, and how many students are having a dues, and how many students from a school, and again if they have a standard, okay, from the school, from the standard, how many students are attending, how many students are there in the sixth standard or fifth standard. If you do any kind of calculations and any kind of metrics, you can do easily when you have a two different objects. Why? Because all metrics you will be uh, storing on only pa the parent. So how we can call it usually is a child and a parent. So one parent can have a multiple child, right? So whichever data that is repeating and you are separating out, that will be called as a parent. And what are the multiple records that are mapping to a single record, that multiple records of the student, for example here, these are treated as a child object, and the right side object is always called as a parent object. It means parent and have a children, right? It's kind of a relation. Excuse me. So so usually the terms we use is parent object, child object, and a relation nothing but the field which is created to map to a parent object. And we have some of the standard fields to calculate something from child to a parent. Now, any questions here so far? Then we can move on.
So you said relation is something is nothing but a field to define the parent object. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you take in a simpler, so I explained all the theory was to understand. But if you look at technically, it will store one field. The field is called a relation. The relation field, what it will do was whichever object you have selected, it will store the IDs of the parent object here. So we have a child object is a student here. What we will do in Salesforce term, we create a one relation field on student, whichever is a child, we'll create a relation field on